Welcome to Cannabis 360, your source for cannabis and psychedelic industry news, interviews, and insights. Visit canna360.ca and sign up to receive free access to the entire Cannabis 360 catalog. In this episode of High Fidelity, we speak with Matt Jerome, founder and chief consultant of Meristem Cannabis Consulting. With over 15 years of experience in the cannabis industry and Canada's first certified Ganjier, Matt provides systematic cannabis assessments to growers and breeders of all types, with a goal to educate and advise companies and individuals within the industry on the importance of quality within the supply chain, as well as provide confidence when it comes to quality-related decisions. All right, welcome, Matt. How are you today?
Not too bad, man. Coming off a pretty nice weekend, so can't complain. How about you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. But really excited to have you here today, joining us for another episode of High Fidelity. So yeah, I mean, let's get right into it. I guess to bury the lead here, we have known each other for quite some time. So we actually went to high school together. Shout out to Richview Collegiate.
Richview?
Yeah, and. You know, I want to sort of, it was really cool sort of when we first started realizing that we're both working in the cannabis industry together. So tell me a little bit about that journey. Like, how did it all start? You know, from those days at Richview all the way till now, and actually working in the cannabis space. You know, what did that journey look like for you?
Oh, pretty up and down one. I like to think I kind of took the long way into getting into this, but it's been a very natural route for me. Always been interested, almost obsessed with cannabis since I was really young. Coming into high school, I'm sure you remember, you know, we had the stoner crews in each grade that we had, and we were heavily involved in those. I was one of those guys that you could always get weed from. You know, just follow your nose at the party and you'd find me. So I always enjoyed cannabis when I was younger, played a lot of sports, used it for a number of reasons, mostly to, you know, calm down pain, lots of things that were troubling me at that time that cannabis seemed to help, and kind of got into a natural, I got family out in LA in Laguna Beach. So I fortunate enough to spend a lot of summers down there when I was younger, and really got dialed in and hooked up with the West Coast cannabis scene there when I was really young, about 13, 14, and just kind of brought the passion back from there over here. I've actually been writing an article about it of how stupid I was back then, because I actually got so excited about growing with some of the people that I did over in California one summer when I was really younger, and learning the ropes of it and really learning what it took and the arts of it, that I smuggled a whole bunch of seeds back in my in my bag, ill-advised, hopped up on, you know, young youth and lightning, and it kind of just went from there. I started as a medicinal grower when I was really young and realized that it helped me medicinally, and it was something that really vibed with me and helped keep a lot of things that I deal with in check, and got involved with a group of kind of graybeards up north near my cottage that I got in touch with, and we created a really fantastic medicinal community that we had. Started branching out from there, grew with the ACMPR when I was younger. Just kind of, you know, like anybody, farting around, really experimenting with stuff, chucking pollen, trying to make some hash that we were you know, in extracts. But really got dialed in with the doing that kind of it went really deep down a rabbit hole really quickly, because we got in touch with a number of people who through the grapevine had heard about some of the things that we were doing and just were interested in it, mostly from the medicinal community and a lot from the ex-military community. That was kind of where we were. And it really started to open my eyes to some people who were using this amazing plant for just a plethora of, you know, ailments and diseases, and really things that I didn't understand as a young, healthy kid. Understand much more now as I'm older. But it kind of came to really stick out to me that I had the ability to really help some of these people with the grows that I did. My obsession really became to help some other people. This was when I was about 18, 19. And really from there, it's been a pretty natural progression into becoming an advocate for it, speaking at any event that I possibly can, to try to help people understand the therapeutic value of it, how to integrate it into your life or someone you know's life safely and effectively, how to grow it, kind of any aspect that I can to really help people understand this plant, and has led me to, found my cannabis consulting agency, and really work for the medicinal community to, you know, fight the fight that we started this whole thing for. I've been really disappointed to see the legal industry kind of let everybody fall behind. So yeah, long answer to your short question.
No, yeah, I love that, and I definitely want to get into the medicinal kind of component to what you do a little bit more.
Mhm.
But I mean, touching back just sort of on the rich few days and sort of that entry point, right? Like I know when I think about those days, like for me, I always think about sort of how far things have come, because like I really remember those days being sort of like the a lot of stigma. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like there was a ton of stigma back then. We were sort of hiding in the forest and, going through all of those motions. And I know for me, like the first sort of introduction to, the quote unquote cannabis culture really came from like 420 rallies at Queen's Park. I remember like very vividly being such a bigger sort of event and experience than I thought it would be. And there were vape lounges popping up, which was another big thing that I remember,
Yep.
sort of being sort of a bit like mind blowing at the time. So I feel like we've come a long way. But did you have like a similar experience? Like, did you feel that stigma and like back then, and sort of have you seen that change happen since?
100%. I felt the weight of the gaslighting, and kind of people looking down on you, or yeah, no, I think back to it, and I don't think it was a time that we consciously struggled, because I kind of wore it like a badge of honor eventually. I know when in the early days, when I always say these kids just don't, some of these kids now with their vapes, where you can just hit it in Target and walk around and do whatever you want and no one really notices. The struggle of having to go to a movie, roll a joint, and walk like 20 minutes back into the forest so that no one would find you and smell you, and that you'd have the guy who brings the Febreze, one guy brings the gum. Like, it was so incognito, cloak and dagger. It was very you really felt like a criminal, almost throughout. Luckily we weren't, and I always think of how really fantastic it is to live in Canada, a place that doesn't, the rules aren't as deep as some of the places that I know in the States that are, we would have been locked up, no problem, no understanding. But the gaslighting and the stigma, for sure. And it was very, very rampant when we were younger, and still has kind of continued to this day. I've been very interested and intrigued, kind of happy one side and still kind of mind blown at the other. A lot of people are really dropping their guards to cannabis. They want to learn about it, whether it's someone they heard it from in their family, a family friend, their grandmother, their son uses it, and it's incorporated into the support system really well. And then as a consultant, I still really run into questions, this side of the border too, because I work both sides, but still on this side of the border about a lot of questions that we really worked hard to eliminate the stigma about. Like, does it lead to other stuff? It's just a gateway drug to really hard stuff. It's fatal. It's something that ruins your life. None of which is true. I did my entire university degree stoned out of my mind, because it really helped me. It was something that I know the stigma of it being something that you depend on rather than something that helps you, your quality of life, your daily function, is really opening up, and that people are really kind of coming at it with a little more humility and go, it's, just because you don't understand it, let's let people do their thing. And we realized that once cannabis was, legalized, no, crime didn't shoot up. Nobody, drunk driving didn't go, or the intoxicated driving didn't go through the roof. Kids aren't, trying new drugs or anything that's really, really detrimental. It's something that in my mind has been the whole war on drugs, and learning about it and really learning what was behind it, the kind of racist and misogynistic rhetoric that was behind all the stuff that was put out. It's frustrating to realize how far it kind of pushes forward into the years. But I really think we're turning a corner and being able to, you can't, we're with the scientists and the researchers and the people who are able to look at this through the lens that we need it to. The myths, all the falsehoods, all the lies, they're really, really just being dispelled. And it's something that we've really been wanting to invite for a long time. But I still remember in Richview just the number of, I played football. I was one of those rare guys who played a lot of sports and was on the leadership program and smoked constantly. Like, it was a very weird, kind of trio that I had going. And I know a lot of my coaches looked down on the cannabis quite a bit, but just kind of said nothing, because they were like, all right, well, he plays well, so go for it. But I'm really, I'm excited to see it change a bit. I still think we got a ways to go, and I'm doing my best to do that. But yeah, it's really nice to be able to kind of light up a joint and not have everybody look at you like you're a complete criminal, or you're insane, that you're just medicating. It's just medicine. It's stuff that we use every day to try to, just help get through the day. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, it's hard to know if sort of like that experience, which I very much resonate with as well, in terms of sort of like the judgment and being looked down upon and that sort of thing, if that was a little bit of a bubble that Richie really was at the end of the day, or if this is like a pretty common experience that like most cannabis consumers sort of in high school had, right? So it's sort of hard to say, right? Just because you really only know like your experience at the end of the day.
It's true.
But yeah, no, I find that really interesting, and sort of you brought up a really good point too. Like, and I think sort of the time that we were growing up, like I remember one of the first documentaries I saw was sort of like on the war on drugs, and it might have been even like The Union, I remember, was like a big documentary that I watched and got like really into it.
Yeah, I remember that.
I think there's like pros and cons to it, but I think it does sort of introduce you to this idea of like, okay, not everything you've been told is necessarily accurate, right? And there is this kind of underlying history that needs to be understood. And I remember that really like resonating with me at the time. Like I said, I think there's sort of pros and cons to that sometimes, where you could sort of go down a bit of a rabbit hole
for sure
that becomes hard to get.
It helped push me into the cannabis culture, like the division of like us versus them, like, oh, you smoke and I don't, therefore maybe they didn't think of this, but it's hard not to, or I'm better than you and you go off and do your thing. It really just pushed me off to go find my people. And the cannabis culture and the cannabis community is one of the most authentic in the entire world. They're a global tribe, and we're strong. We're strong
and sort
together.
of like proving that stereotype wrong, right?
Yeah,
like
you
really
said,
is. Like utilizing cannabis at university. And, I'm a pretty strong advocate of like, that there is there is such a thing as problematic cannabis use, right? Like,
for sure.
And I think that sort of sometimes gets missed a little bit, but at the same time, like I think there has been so much pushback the other way that it sort of makes sense that there's sort of this counter reaction to that. But I feel similar too. Like I felt cannabis was really helpful in terms of, my academic journey at the end of the day. And then eventually, like, to the, not necessarily like the chagrin of my parents, but like it did really work out in terms of like perfect timing where, I was doing research on psychedelic plants. And then right when I came back to Canada was when Trudeau was campaigning on legalization. So it was sort of perfect timing, at least for me, in terms of like making that jump. So, you mentioned like the medical component. And I think a lot of people sort of approach cannabis or have like a similar story in terms of like how they got into the cannabis industry by really coming at it from that medical perspective. So like, how did that really start for you? Was it your athletic career? I know you've dealt with like injuries in the past. And then also too, it sounds like it was sort of, making those recommendations. Like I know for me personally, like I had a lot of like aunts sort of like coming out of the closet and being like, hey, I got a back issue. Like, hey, can you help me with this? And honestly, like probably 3-4 years before that, at the Thanksgiving dinner, I was getting like vilified for, sneaking out with the cousins, right? So yeah.
Going for the pre-walk.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotta stretch my legs.
Yeah.
Well, I getting into the both being sons of journalists, or being involved in the producer and the side of that. My mom was a journalist, and I had the fortune of traveling a lot with her when we were younger. So it was kind of all over the place, seeing different places that were really used to cannabis. She worked a lot in the Middle East. She worked in Amsterdam, Rotterdam, London, Paris. So I spent a lot of time in Amsterdam as a kid, shooting documentaries over at the Bulldog and stuff like that. So cannabis was very much involved in my life. Like my mom was a hippie when I was younger. She was very open about it and talked about it when I kind of got a little bit older, even kind of younger. I realized, obviously, being around it, I had a lot of questions when I was younger, and everybody was very, very open with it, that this is medicine, this is stuff that older people use, that you don't touch it, you don't use it. As you said, back to, people, I wouldn't advise anybody doing what I did, blazing up a storm all the time, because it's not necessarily all of it. You need to know about it continuously or continuously keep up with what's going on. So it was always open and around, and there was no lies about it at all. And always pretty easy to kind of get it when we were younger, but incorporating it into doing the medicinal side for me was something that, as you mentioned, I did a lot of sports when I was younger. I was a little bit of a contact. I was magnetized to them. I love playing hockey, football, lacrosse, kickboxing, all of them. So I had a number of injuries that, even by the time I was like 16 or so, I had tons of broken bones and ligament tears and all this stuff, and really became something that I chose. I kind of vividly remember at a party, kind of being, here's the blunt, here's the beer. I went, you know what? I feel like this is more of a choice for me. I really don't feel like getting too drunk tonight, which was a very common thing in the sports culture that I was really, really immersed in. It's parties and booze and pain and sweat and glory. That's literally, the formula for it. So it was very hard to get through a lot of that. Sometimes as a young kid, I played really hard. I was a little bit bigger than I hit puberty a little bit earlier than other people. So coaches loved me. They loved throwing me out there, and really I worked as an enforcer and pretty much wrecked my shoulder when I was about 17 or 18, that I needed reconstructive surgery on when I was about 19. Yeah. Going into 20, which completely threw my life into quite a spiral. I was supposed to be going to Laurier for a scholarship for football, completely tore the shoulder out, posteriorly, and just sent me in a mental spin as well. That's not something that a lot of people kind of correlate to it, that I had always had a little bit of an anxious kid when I was younger. Had a lot of, kind of tics and stuff, and really worried a lot more than the average kid, which is why I think cannabis kind of vibed with me originally, something that I used recreationally because I didn't really know it was medicinal, and I didn't know it was helping me until later on when I really started using it for pain management, for anxiety management, for depression. Versus what a lot of people thought was going to be okay for me, which was kind of drinking and painkillers. So right when I got my shoulder surgery, as always, they threw me just a mountain of painkillers and Vicodin. And unfortunately, it was something that I kind of got addicted to really, really easily with, the mental aspect of trying to deal with the fact that I was no longer an athlete and couldn't play sports anymore, and that I really had to reassess everything, to dealing with the pain of the shoulder. It was a medicinal, it was very therapeutic for me to get through that time. And that's something that I find resonates with a lot of people when I came out. As I mentioned before, when I was growing with the ACMPR and started talking with people, especially ex-veterans, ex-sports guys, naturally I kind of magnetized them, or we resonated with each other. So we got to talking, and a lot of the times it was head injuries, pain, sleeplessness, PTSD, that kind of, the way that I look at it is they're all in kind of a bubble together, not necessarily each being comparable to the other one, but it seemed that there was always a correlation. There was always a couple. And me personally, it was something that really, as I mentioned, just helped with my pain and my mental aspect of it. But the surprising thing for me as I got into growing it was the therapeutic value in that. So that's something that a lot of people don't talk about, and a lot of people don't realize why I kind of feel cheesy sometimes when I talk about this plant, because I get very kind of spiritual and very real when I talk about it, because it is a therapeutic plant from top to bottom. It is medicine, even just being around it, just smelling it in the jar. You don't have to smoke it. You don't have, like, it is. I found a lot of people who are using it for a number of different ways to just help with their day. It doesn't have to cure anything. And that's what a lot of people kind of dichotomize it with. Well, with the pharmaceutical industry, where it cures or it doesn't, or it does something or it doesn't. Whereas cannabis has a lot of just overall therapeutic value. And I've been really proud to have had my brain and my instincts kind of choose that joint, because it's led me to this. And it's really, really exciting to be able to learn with, as I mentioned before, the scientists and the researchers that are coming out and doing the wonderful work that I almost couldn't have dreamed that cannabis can do what it does. And I'll say that with a grain of salt, because it is not a panacea. It doesn't cure everything. It doesn't have this overall, you know, complete wiping of everything, that it has the ability to cure the world, but it can help quite a bit. And that's what it's about right now, is really, really helping quality of life, helping people who are struggling quite a bit mentally, physically, emotionally. We all know it's tied to the homeostatic system, and we know what the endocannabinoid system does with that. So it's a very exciting time for me to have kind of gone from where I've come from, choosing that joint at the party, and really kind of coming full circle and being able to offer that advice to people and really have helped some people throughout their life, which is very thing that I'm really proud of, for sure.
Yeah, no, even the couple times that, like, I think we've hung out, like I've noticed that with you, that you sort of mentioned that quite a few times, like that, like choosing cannabis over alcohol, right? And like that's been like an important part of your journey, which I think it is really important. Like I think having, different options, what a lot of people would consider like a safer alternative, right? Whether, it's recreational or not, right? Like I think is super important. Now, in terms of your sort of like entry point into the industry, now I definitely want to talk about you being, Canada's first Ganjier, but sort of prior to that, what was like actually your sort of first like entry point into the space, because we have a lot of people in the audience that, you know, might be looking to actually like break into the cannabis industry and actually sort of like find that first role. So what did that look like for you?
It was an interesting process, to say the least. What I did was, as soon as I saw legalization coming around the corner, I think it must have been 2017 or so, that I really started realizing, okay, this is coming to fruition, at least in the next little while. So I wanted to kind of get myself set up for that and look at the next option, because I knew a lot of people were going to be coming out of the woodwork, and you know, there was going to be a wave of people coming out. So what I tried to do was step myself up a bit by trying to find something, find an educational source that I could really learn what I don't know. So I took an industrial cannabis production degree over at the North American College of Pharmaceutical Technology over in Mississauga. Was the inaugural class for that, first ones to finish, which was a really good program to really teach you what you don't know about the industry, how to scale, how to understand the problems that are going to arise. In my opinion, something that a lot of people just didn't do in the industry. I just see mistakes all over the place, and that shouldn't have happened, but I digress. But that really helped me understand how to frame my mind into what was really going to go on with the industry, as far as the regulatory tape, Health Canada, how they were going to be implemented into or integrated, into the whole system. And I did a internship program with a place out in Markham. Don't want to name them, because that actually was something that spiraled me off into founding Meristem. I know a lot of people, and I'm happy to talk to anybody about what. So please tell them to reach out as far as what advice I have for specific places that you want to get in the industry. What I'd say is have a very good idea of what's going on. You want to make sure that you know both the positives and a lot of the negatives that are going on in the industry right now, especially with what's changing, because it's always changing. I did an internship over in Markham, and basically was so stressed out that I couldn't, it just crippled me mentally. It was really, really bad to realize what was going on in the industry, as far as the corners being cut, the lack of attention to medicinal care and safe, affordable access, people paying for testing, people buying testing results. It was very frustrating in many ways for me to come from the medicinal background that I had and working with the people, to see the complete focus on profit over progress. So it was something that really kind of spiraled me into figuring out where I can help the best. So personally, for me, it was to try to really speak up from the medicinal community that I saw that was really suffering and it was not the cannabis industry that they were promised and that we were promised and that we fought for quite hard. It seemed to be handed over to the big businesses and quite literally just go ahead and make tons of money for you guys. So it was a little bit disillusioning for me to come into the industry that I did, which I will give my two grain of salt as well, that this was a couple years ago, and it was quite literally the wild west there. Like it's still quite chaotic, but some of the stories that I heard were not dissimilar to mine, and were very, very depressing at the beginning. And it's something that we're really happy to see kind of change, and see people realize that quality sells itself. It's something that people are starting to look for. People are starting to value their employees a little bit better. At least I've seen some places do that. That's not a blanket thing by any means, but it gives you hope when you start to see people who really understand the human aspect of this, which is what it really started on. We're a community, we're a tribe. This is what cannabis is about. It's not making millions of dollars. It's about helping the next person when you've got yourself on your feet. give that love out, try to help someone else. And it's something that I slowly see coming into the industry, which I love too, but I'm trying to bring it harder.
Yeah. So really seeing the dark side, I guess, of the industry, like right out of the gate, eh?
Yeah.
Now, yeah, and now, so tell me about sort of what led you then to the Ganjier program, because I know that's a great program. I know that they have a huge focus on sort of like quality and assessing the quality of cannabis, and really like sort of becoming that cannabis connoisseur, right? At the end of the day. So tell me a little bit about that. Sort of like how did you stumble across that, um, and yeah, like how has that sort of served you in your current role, and you know what sort of led you to start Meristem and what you're doing now?
Incredible. Very, very like most things and most stories that I have in the within cannabis in the community. It's very kind of grassroots one. About 2018, the Grow Up conference happened over in Niagara, and I've been on the tours for a long time. I've been trying my best. It's something that you got to do, meet people and shake hands, and something that I love doing and really enjoyed, but really hadn't found a conference or an expo that spoke the way that we wanted to until 2018 Grow Up, where I had the fortune of meeting both Frenchie Canoli and Kevin Jodry, who were later on became founders of the Ganjier, along with a couple other wonderful minds out of Humboldt and Mendocino up there. And it was something that really sparked me. Like I remember having the fortune of talking with both Frenchie and Kevin afterwards, and just kind of pouring myself out, like listening to everything that they had to say. And it's cheesy, but these guys really ignited a passion in me that you can really do something, that you can be a different source of information in the industry, that you can stand by your guns. You don't have to fall over into what everybody else is doing. And they really, really spoke about the love of the plant that they have over in Humboldt and in the Emerald Triangle, and love of the farmer, love of the process, love of the craft, love of the heritage, of the quality, of the community, of helping people. And it's something that I think, just being, kind of hippie spirited and throughout, that just resonated with me. And it was something that really spoke to me that year. I met some fantastic people who I actually still work with that continue to say that was one of the trips. And it was, getting into the Ganjier was very easy for me when I started. I followed them along. So I think it was, whether it was French or Kevin, I think I saw it on their Instagram or LinkedIn that they were starting this, that they were looking at it. And immediately I was, all right, I really want to be part of something. But like anything in the industry, was really skeptical of what it can really do, because it's really hard to start investing in all this stuff without really seeing a return. But it was something that I took the leap with, for sure, and went, you know what, I think this is going to be worth it. And I just can't say how much I enjoyed absolutely every second of being down there, being immersed in the culture, really trying to learn everything that we could about the history, about the people the people who built this building that we were standing on, that we were able to see out and make these changes, and how hard we'd fought and what we were fighting against. And it was really, really illuminating to me to understand. I mean, this is all stuff I'd known throughout, but what was really illuminating to me was to be around people who felt the same way. Because like anybody with serious passion about something, if you talk with someone else who doesn't have the same one, you just sound kind of crazy. So it's hard to do that around cannabis as well, because especially being such a new and nuanced thing, that when I talk to people about cannabis and the nuances of wine, it's hard. It's stuff that we need to compare and contrast to as well, because there's a lot of comparisons to make. There's a lot of similarities, but there are almost more dissimilarities and differences, especially having the medicinal side to it. So coming into it, it's something that I'm really proud to be part of being kind of a shepherd of quality. That's what the Ganjier really stands for, is really coming into the industry and being the best for it, not being the best in it. We want to work as a group to help pass on the information you need. There's an overwhelming amount of information out there for anybody looking to incorporate this into their lives, or even look into it. It's almost overwhelming to try to find something, and it's something that I'm really trying to push both the regulatory and the government and anybody I can who will listen, that this is an educational thing that we need to set up from the top down and really have people help people understand that this is an alternative medicine. This wasn't, in my opinion, brought to the Canadian people to make the government more money. It's not a revenue opportunity. This is an opportunity to help heal a lot of damaged people out there who are really suffering from stuff that has been compounded and layered and layered. It's something just like every life that we have. It's so nuanced. Cannabis can help. And what we want to do with the Ganjier is to help systematically imbue that information, or help people understand it. The other thing that I'm really excited to be doing with the Ganjier program, and it's truly a dream come true, and we spoke briefly about what I was doing this weekend, but we are trying to bring a standardized assessment to any cannabis competition that's coming through. And lots of people, what I want to explain is that it's a very integrative process. There's nothing predatory about this, that we want to come and take over anything. What we really want to do is standardize testing as if we would do it in any competition that you have, any beer competition, craft beer, any wine, any competitions that you have with Scotch. There is a standardized system that you objectively grade each kind of product and each different nuance that you have. And it's something that we want to bring to cannabis. And the standardized assessment protocol that we use, which is basically, it goes into breaking up the aroma, the appearance, the experience, and the flavor of it. And we want to help relate people to the cannabis, because for a number of reasons, as I said before, it's a little overwhelming when your grandma walks into a dispensary and is recommended green crack, and it's something that immediately she's like, I don't understand. What do you mean? What is that? So many questions come. So it's a fantastic program that I've really enjoyed bringing to Canada as well. What we're really trying to do is help integrate it into any of the cups that we said. And I just had the fortune actually of coming back from the Indigenous Cannabis Cup over in Eastern Ontario and Napanee and the Mohawk territories over there, which was an incredibly important event to be at for so many reasons. It was really important to be there to support the Indigenous community that I know has been marginalized so hard on almost every endeavor that Canada has ever had. And also important to really help bring the normalization of cannabis as the within the medicinal community, for people to come out and see what it's about. So we had walks of life from all over the place, like, all types of walks. Grandmas, we had no kids were allowed, so no kids, but just anybody you can imagine. You can't think of who was there because you'd be kind of side pocketing them. It was so surprising to see every walk of life there, and really encouraging to get to speak to them, to get to answer questions and help people relate to cannabis, because people have worked quite hard to vilify it and make it something that is to be feared and something to be really hated in many ways. And it's not. It really is. And it's a fantastic tool for almost everybody to incorporate. You can incorporate it into your life anyway. We've got tinctures, we've got salves, we've got rubs. it's a whole new world out there, and it's really, really exciting to be able to bring that knowledge to anybody out there who needs it, because it's one of the most rewarding things that I find in the industry, is truly helping somebody who doesn't understand what's going on. And I've had a number of people who I've helped start vaping, and all the way to now they grow 5 or 6 plants in their backyard medicinally. They love it. They're obsessed with it. I got emails and emails of questions. And it's a very, very exciting thing, because that's what I think is going to happen with everyone who really understands and gets past the rhetoric and gets past the lies and understand that we've been lied to for a long time about this. Like, it's sad.
Something you mentioned there, like which I, I feel in a lot of ways, to me, this is sort of the biggest gap right now in the legal cannabis industry. And I'm the first to say that it's come a long way, but like you mentioned quality, and like I sort of, I think like growing up, you sort of just got what your buddy had, right?
Yeah,
And
the plug's quality was it.
Yeah. And like I never believed sort of like the naming of the cultivars or whatever. But I think when, like, at least for me, when I saw sort of the dispensary boom happen here in Toronto, that's really what introduced me to sort of like how much variation there was in cannabis. And that was really, I think, along my journey of becoming someone who, not necessarily like, I would never sort of label myself as this, expert cannabis connoisseur, but I definitely have an affinity for, flavor profiles and that sort of thing, a lot more than some people I expected. I don't know about you, but like there's some people that we grew up with that were, as big of cannabis consumers as I was, but that hasn't really translated over to the legal cannabis industry. I mean, they don't really care. Like they are people that are sort of that like high THC buyer, right? That we hear a lot about, and there's a lot of criticism around that. I think, I think a lot of that criticism is fair, but at the same time, I think it does speak to just like sort of the diversity of cannabis consumers that are out there, and that there are some people that don't really care about that. But I do think a big sort of tenet of the of legalization was bringing people from the illicit market to the legal market. And I think one of the biggest gaps there really is quality, in my opinion, sort of some kind of combination of quality and price. Like I think,
yes,
you can see sort of some products that are meeting that quality standard. And I'm really not speaking to, I think some people's sort of version of quality is like, is it lab tested? Is it safe? Is it clean? And I'm all for that. I agree. Yeah. I'll be honest, I tend to lean more towards like, is it flavorful? I'm very basic. I'm like, does it taste like Kush? Is it gas? Like that is sort of my, what I gravitate to. But again, I, totally support clean, tested cannabis as well. And that's what I think is sort of like the biggest value that the legal cannabis industry gives. But I think there is this component that's missing, right? And like I said, I think we've come a long way, but there is still that quality of cannabis that like I find really hard to get in the legal market still, at least. And
100%.
I think that's something that you're sort of passionate about as well. And part of your reasoning for wanting to start something like Meristem is sort of like closing that gap, right? So can you talk a little bit about that, and like, what are you seeing in the industry? Like, are you feeling sort of the same way? Are you seeing that gap as well? And what can we do to sort of close it?
Great question, man. And I 100% see the gap as well. Like I'm quality obsessed. Like that's one reason that when I spoke with Frenchie and Kevin, that like Frenchie was a guy who would stand on the thing and quality, like this is what you need. And it's all he talked about. And it was the first time that I went, holy crap, I'm not insane. Like I am obsessed with the quality of cannabis. And you made a great point right there that a lot of what's going on right now, the quality that's being, people equating quality to THC, unfortunately, which is a really, really tough, just flat out wrong. I'm going to say it. It's just something that when you hand me a cannabis product, I don't really care what kind of THC it is. I don't need to know. I need to know what the experience has in me. So everything that I'm going to be told is going to be told by this guy and this guy here. I'm going to smell it. I'm going to experience it and feel it in the brain. It is an experience the same way as, You know, you don't look at beer with alcohol content. It's just not how we buy beer anymore. We buy it depending on its taste, depending on the feel, depending on what season it is. It can depend on a lot of stuff. And cannabis is exactly like that. It is so nuanced. And what I was so disheartened to see, and you've hit it right on the head, and we are getting better. But in my opinion, we should never ever have been as low. Like the bar should never have gotten as low as it was with when I bought my first half quarter legally for $48, I think it was, and got dusty mold. It was horrific. And it was immediately one of those things that I just, like, we had planned. We had years to focus on this. This was a product that was everyone smoked, and all we needed to do was grow it decently and sell it at a decent price. Didn't need to have it be the top quality right away. I knew there's going to be a little bit of a gap and a little bit of a learning progress and learning curve. But it was dismal. It was really, really something that completely shot us out at the knees right away. I know so many producers who are, going, well, this is what I have to push out because Health Canada has handcuffed us and thrown us in a pool pretty much. And it was discouraging in many ways. And as you said, it has gotten better, but this is I need safe, affordable quality. And this is what we need for our patients. This is what we fought for. This is what we deserve. This is what this whole industry was brought to. Legalization happened because people in the medicinal industry were brave enough, lost their lives, lost their freedom, lost a lot of things, and relationships, just completely changed their way of life to protect and fight for this plant, for the access to it. And that brought it up to the starting line for legalization. And as we mentioned right at the beginning, like, it wasn't hard to get cannabis over in Richfield. Like you had a plug, it was decent quality. There's no way that anybody I know got sick off smoking cannabis because it was moldy or crappy. We would have known that right away. So people were growing it with quality in mind because they wanted to sell it. And that's something that I've said in the industry, and as my catch line, that quality sells itself. In any industry that you've ever looked at, the top people will pay anything for the top scotch, for the top wine, for the top, craft beer, craft cheese, craft anything. That the amount of money that people are willing to pay for rarity, quality, and an exceptional experience, something that you can't imbue into it, that you can't fake. It's only time. And that's something that I've been trying to drive with cannabis, and something that I've really, really tried to push even before the Ganjier. And with the Ganjier, I feel this huge, we kind of got the team behind us now. Like, it's a global network that we're able to really talk to. I'm keeping my finger what's going on in Kansas, keeping my finger of going what's on in the Virgin Islands and Germany and all the places that we have other Ganjiers, and even can connect with some people throughout the program. And I'm really excited to the next step as far as this is. We had to let the money guys in. We had to let them try what they thought was going to work, which was throwing money at every single problem that ever came up in the industry, making 3 million square foot greenhouses, and then wondering why the entire thing went to, hop latent or powdery mildew, or you got bug problems. There was no scaling. There was no ability to see the problems ahead, which is what we have done in the community for decades, is learn how to scale, learn how to grow craft quality, exceptional cannabis. And that has a scale. There's only a certain amount that you can do. That's the same thing with every single product that we use. That's kind of a gustatory feel. That's what I say. And it's something that I love to be able to quantify this quality now. I am surprised at some people that we smoke with. I've had a couple people that I've reunited with, and especially being in Ganjier, I have a couple more questions and want to shoot the moon with some people that I'm talking to get interested and man, what do you taste? Like, what's going on with this? Is this a gassy one for you? Do you taste earth in it? I don't really know, man. I like it. It tastes like weed. Really? You? Oh man, like, holy cow. So it's something that I've been obsessed with since I can remember, is pulling out. Like, it's a fruity taste, but it's more of like a stone fruit. It's not like a blueberry or a raspberry. It's got like a peach or a nectarine flavor. What is that? And I always thought I was insane and would have no value whatsoever moving on. But this is something that I'm really excited to bring to, like I said, both the cannabis competitions, regulatory, policymakers, people who are really trying to make this from the top down. I'm really looking overseas to try to help some people who are getting into this game and see whether it's you see the dollar signs or you see the medicinal potential. It can be a win-win for everybody, because there is a lot of financial gain to it, but it must be done in the right way. And this is something that I'm really excited to bring, the quality management aspect of it. It is not something that you can fake, and quality sells itself. And it's something that I really, really hope we can focus on in Canada and not miss the boat, because we got so many people outside us who are going to legalize and are already moving forward with things like consumption lounges that we talked about. Like, that's something we really miss. And I've been working with an advisory board called the Canadian Cannabis Tourism Alliance, doing our best to bring some sanity to the market and have open consumption spaces for people to enjoy cannabis around other cannabis users, to chat, to talk, to ask questions, to have the medicinal, it's so important to be part of a community when you're looking for something like that. And this is where, again, I flop back to the medicinal model, and it's all about it, because it's where it started. That's who I really care about. I love that people are using cannabis now. I love that people are, becoming a little more open to it. And I'll try it and I'll go, use it. That's wonderful. What I'm really worried about is the cancer patient or the fibromyalgia patient that I work with, or someone who's going through such severe depression or anxiety that they need a quality cannabis that they can use and rely on, that doesn't break their bank. And it's not out there yet. It's really hard for me to recommend consistent. I've got a couple, and I've got some people that I really, really love, that are fantastic, that stay tuned to what I'm coming out with, because I'm really doing my best to write some articles about these people, to pull some of the spotlight off these big MSOs and these big multi-corporations, and onto the quality makers, onto the people who we really, really want to be in the industry. So again, I realize I've kind of gone full circle with this, but the quality aspect to me is one of the most important, and it's coming from a place of real importance to our population, to our Canadian population. This is a healing plant, and it can really, really do some good for everybody out there. And I really hope to be able to integrate it and help have you safely use it in your life, and those around you, because it can be so wonderful. It's just the best.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's one of those things where, you want other countries, as they start to legalize, to, not make the same mistakes that we're going to make. And I think a lot of people are pointing to places like Germany, where it feels like they're going down a similar road, and you see sort of like the same rhetoric from some of the big operators, sort of making the same, like talking points, basically, that, talking about it as like the biggest market ever, and that there's this huge user base there. And, that really didn't necessarily pan out in Canada. And I think, part of that reason, like, there's so many benefits to legalization, whether it is like the safe supply, the testing behind it, just like the convenience factor. Like, I don't know about you, but like, I don't want to have to wait on like someone who is sort of flaky and doesn't answer their phone, and, all of those.
The age-old stoner question. Yeah, I'll see you in 20 minutes. I just got something to do.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like, all of those things, like, I'm sort of happy that we've moved beyond that, but like, there is this piece of I think, like, quality cannabis, and there is that 80-20 rule, right, where 80% of your sales comes from 20% of that user base. And I really do think that, like, maybe we've captured like 5-10% of that user base, but we definitely haven't captured all 20. And I still think there's a lot of people that we need to still convert to the legal market. And, you know, like you said, I think the missing piece really does come down to like that perfect balance of like quality and affordability, because I agree, like even when we look back on the sort of illicit dispensary days, it's like people were willing to pay like $12 a gram, like $14 a gram, right? Like that was sort of part of that business model, and that hasn't necessarily gone away, but I just don't think it's, you know, you're not necessarily like getting what you pay for every time. And it's tough because you can't like see the product before you purchase it. Right?
It's like roulette. It really is.
Exactly.
Whereas getting at the dispensary, one thing, and it's a huge thing, is I got to smell my thing before. And I based my choice not on who was selling it, but what that experience was in the nose or the visual, which is something we've been robbed of in this industry, which is detrimental. It really is. So,
which like, again, I think that the merits of like sort of deli style serving, I think there is like an interesting argument to have there. And when you talk about cannabis as sort of this like CPG sort of product, like I think that's where like people would sort of make the argument against a deli style. My argument to that would be like, once we get to the point where it's actually a CPG industry, where like, you know, if I buy this one brand, it's consistent every single time. I buy this Bubba Kush from this brand, it tastes and the experience is the exact same every time. I just don't think we're there yet, right? Like I think we could maybe get there in like, you know, a 5-10 year kind of time frame, but it really just isn't quite there yet. So it does make it difficult, right, to sort of make those you know, purchasing decisions at the end of the day. So
100%, yeah.
But I think that's sort of what makes it exciting. Like it's like we have a long way to go, and there's something exciting about that, right? Like it's still you know, on that path. And, you know, there's people like you that are really sort of dedicating themselves to it. So I really commend you for that. And, you know, I think there's a lot that this sort of approach can bring to the industry. So, you know, again, it's really cool sort of coming full circle like this with you, Matt. And I highly recommend that people reach out to you, that people find out what Meristem is all about, because you are doing some really cool things there. And yeah, this was a great chat, and thank you for joining me today.
My pleasure, man. Pleasure's all mine. Really, really cool to come full circle like this again. I was really thinking, check my schedule, and I'm like, wow, 18-year-old me would be pretty psyched. He'd be giving us some serious high fives right now.
Yeah, I know.
So
right?
I'm proud of that.
We
that
really
matters
did make a career out of cannabis. Which,
if only we'd listen, you know, had listened to our parents. Cannabis and video games. So,
yeah, exactly.
It's been my pleasure to be on Cannabis 360, Connor. I really appreciate you taking the time. And yeah, if please, anybody who wants to reach out to me, have a chat, learn more about Meristem, I'm an open book. So yeah, always love chatting.
Definitely. We'll have all the links down to reach out to Matt down below. So definitely get in touch, and really appreciate it, Matt. Thank you again.
You're welcome, man. You're welcome.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of High Fidelity. For access to the entire Cannabis 360 catalog, subscribe at canna360.ca or visit our YouTube channel, Canna360.